Hi, I'm Georgia,
And I'm Simone.
and welcome to episode 60 of the Hope Book Club podcast, where we chat about books from a hope-filled Christian lens. And in honour of International Youth Day and Children's Book Week this month, we're going to turn back some time to the teen years as we talk about all things YA, young adult, in this episode.
But that trip in time is a little longer for some of us than others. But books, YA books, are often the subject of a lot of myths out there. And so first up, before we get into our favourite YA book, I want to bust some myths. Are you ready, Georgia? You ready? We're going to play Guess True or Myth.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
Okay. First one, YA is a genre all on its own.
Oh, why'd you start with the hardest one? I actually don't know. Okay, I want to go through my thought processes. Books, like adult books, will have all different genres. So it makes sense to me that there's young adult versions of all of those genres. But sometimes we just talk about YA as YA books. I'm going to go with my gut and say that is a myth.
You ready to lock that in?
Yes.
You're locking that? Yeah, true.
Oh, no. Okay. Zero from one.
It's a myth.
Oh.
Because, as in, sorry, true. Your answer is true.
Correct.
So it's a myth. Like YA is just young adult books. That includes fantasy, drama, like all the different kind of genres that there are.
Good. I'm vindicated.
So first one, that was the hardest. Okay. Number 2, it's for teens.
Well, yes, it is for teens, but it's not only for teens. Is that what's
It's
the
for
question?
Teens. The statement is it's for teens.
Yes, true.
It is true. However, like you said, it's for all ages.
Yes, I love YA books.
It is technically, YA is technically, it's teens or sort of, I guess, young adults as in children. I would say personally like 10 to 18 would be the teen range.
Yep.
But I think everyone has
Pre-teens.
different, that kind of pre-teens, teens. So question 3. YA books don't contain any substance, and the writing is worse than than adult novels.
No, that's a myth. that was very insulting. My goodness, did you come up with these sentences, Simone? No.
Sadly, no.
Okay. No, that's definitely a
This
myth.
is often a myth that is set out there, and it's annoying. I think it's the same kind of myth as women's literature is not as deep or of substance, and that again is also a myth.
Okay.
So, second last question. YA started in the 1940s and 50s, but blossomed in the 1960s.
Okay, I have no idea about this one, so I'm going to take a complete stab in the dark and say 1940s and 50s. It seems very specific, so I'm going to say that's true. That's when YA started.
It's true.
Yay!
Yeah, absolutely. Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys were the ones that really helped pave the way for what is YA today.
The only Hardy Boys references I know are from Only Murders in the Building, that TV show. So maybe I need to go back and read the actual books.
That's gold. I definitely read more Nancy Drew. And so final question. People who read YA books can't handle adult books.
No, that's a myth. Although it might be true in the sense that I think some of the YA books I've read are more intense than adult fiction. So if we're going that route, but no, YA books can be just as intense, if not more, than a lot of the fiction out there.
And just because you read, even as an adult, just read YA books does not mean that you can't handle adult books as well. I do think there are some kids out there reading YA and they're not at the level yet to handle it. But yeah, that's basically a myth.
Okay, Sim, both you and I already been established that we are fans of YA books. We have some pretty clear favourites. So let's get into our personal top tier YA books or series. Sim, let's start with yours. What is your favourite YA book or series of all time?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with some quick
honorable mentions
because how do you choose an absolute favorite?
Okay.
So big honorable mentions are the last sort of 20 years, Hunger Games and Harry Potter were big ones for me. Absolutely loved them. Totally really got into those ones. And I grew up on Nancy Drew and the Babysitter's Club.
Oh.
So those two are kind of honorable mentions, but I am gonna choose a series that for me defined my childhood, my teen years, my adult years, like everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Chronicles of Narnia series, with a big shout out to like my absolute top tier in that, which is The Magician's Nephew.
I was going to say, you absolutely love that. And throwback to our earlier episode when we were discussing film adaptations and you desperately want The Magician's Nephew to be made into a movie. Guess you've already explained why you love it, but why specifically do you love this series? What was it that stood out to you?
Okay, so for me, I think the thing that stands out massively is it's a series that has incredible fantasy scenes, and it's total fantasy, but it's kind of this fantasy that you get to step into as well. Like, you as just part of here, like it's this fantasy that exists within our world. And I kind of love that. And then added to that is the way that C.S. Lewis writes it is so specific and so well written that you can really not just see yourself there but feel yourself there.
Yeah.
And I kind of as a child I loved that especially, and then as I got older you start reading like the layers that are in that of just how powerful that series can be, and just how incredible it is to see something that, or to read something that has this entire world within our world, that also just shows you, even when it's difficult, the way that you can still kind of persevere through and really kind of have, I guess, that good always overcoming bad.
I think you've already spoken about the themes, the important themes, but what was unique about the book when you compare it across to, even classics like Harry Potter and Hunger Games, like you mentioned before? Why does the Chronicles of Narnia stand out the most to you? What is the unique?
I think for me it was that first time it was this magical world within our world that you could kind of cross over into this place that still existed, or sort of, seemed to exist. It wasn't a fantasy magic world that was either a million light years away or was sort of like ran parallel to our world. It was actually within our world. And then I think for The Magician's Nephew quite specifically, he literally created a world. And I think like it wasn't just he was creating a world for us to be in, but you actually read about the world being created. I don't know if I can explain that really well, but The Magician's Nephew basically is about sort of, the creation of Narnia and how that place came to be. And so I think that's what's unique. You don't often get to actually see the world be created.
Yeah, it's already created by the time you read the book normally.
You're just you're having it created in your mind, but the author's already has that world.
Who would you recommend this book to? Obviously, you said you from any age, 0 to 99 is what you're going to say?
Look, Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe was read to me when I was in year 2. It was something that was read to me, but I don't think it was sort of, it's one of those things where you can have it read to you. You're not necessarily reading it yourself when you're quite younger. I do think reading it for yourself, like maybe 9 or 10 up. I do think there are some difficult things in there and some things that you'd probably want to talk to your family or your parents about. But honestly, any age, I 100%, if you've never read it, and even if you don't love, fantasy or sci-fi or anything like that, I do think this is one of those ones that you can delve into. Or if you've seen the adaptations and you're like, I've seen what happened, I don't need to read the books. Absolutely not. It is still definitely worth reading.
All right. Who or what would be on the ideal soundtrack for this book?
This is the hardest question. Absolutely. I love music. I love soundtracks. They are like, love them. But this for this one, obviously, a lot of soundtracks already exist because Narnia has been made into a lot of films. There's some great ones out there. But I think for especially The Magician's Nephew, which hasn't been made, and I'm just going to say shout out to Greta Gerwig, who is making the Narnia series soon. If you want to take any advice, here's what I think.
Greta, if you're listening, we love you.
Absolutely love you. Happy to come on stuff and help. But I think Magician's Nephew needs something just a little bit more kind of almost synthy, like a little indie, a little synthy. I'm thinking like old school two-door cinema club kind of vibes, like that. Just there's something a little magical about it while still being grounded in that very kind of indie, like world, like this world kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I say. And then of course, Hans Zimmer, like you'll always go the absolute master if you can.
For sure.
Got to ask Georgia, now that I've rambled about my favorite, what's yours?
Oh, it's I think clear at this point how much we have the same mind. We go away and write our own notes, and I realize how similar this is because I also have honorable mentions, and would you believe it, those honorable mentions are also Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. Harry Potter raised me as a child, Hunger Games raised me as a teenager. The Maze Runner also up there, loved that series. But I wanted to talk about something that doesn't get a whole lot of love, and it was one of my favorite series as a teen, and that is the Inkheart trilogy by Cornelia Funk. And I brought the book because it is the thickest book that I own, up until this point. Even the Bible isn't that as thick as this book. It's 1,146 pages. It is all three books in one, so it's not just like you're not just reading one book. But yes, that is the Inkheart series, and the story follows 12-year-old Maggie, who learns that her bookbinder father, Mo, actually has a special gift. When he reads aloud to her, he actually brings characters to life, like from the book into the real world. Now, when Maggie was 3, Mo read aloud from a book called Inkheart, which brought the evil characters from that novel into the world, including the villainous Capricorn. But this power came with a price, and as a trade, Maggie's mother had to go into the book instead. So she's been missing, quote, missing for 9 years. And so now Maggie and Mo must fight to stop Capricorn, stop the villains, and rescue Maggie's mum from her fate.
That sounds awesome.
It is so good. I love this book so much. It was a present from my friend for my 12th birthday, and I read it. It took me 8 weeks to read the entire trilogy all over the Christmas holidays at the end of year 7. Brilliant. Best 8 weeks of my life.
I was going to say that's the kind of birthday present you want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or Christmas. So I've got to ask, you sort of talked a little bit about why you love the book. Is there anything else, like any other reasons that you just love it?
I am not a big fantasy person. My first fantasy books that I read were probably actually the Chronicles of Narnia, which I loved. Harry Potter, but again, Harry Potter I didn't love. It was a different kind of fantasy. So here we're talking more like Lord of the Rings kind of vibes, right? I was completely engrossed in this book. And normally fantasy doesn't grab me. The characters, the scenes, I find it all just too descriptive and too much. It's like you get me to the good parts. Too much is happening. But this world that Maggie and Mo found themselves in was just completely engrossing to me. I think also Cornelia Funk, the author herself, is actually German. So this this is a translated copy. So I think it was different than a lot of the other fantasy books that I'd read by English authors. I don't know if that came across just simply in the translation. It was different than other books I was used to. It didn't have a naturally kind of happy ending. It dealt with a lot of difficult themes. And when I was 12, I wasn't used to books that weren't wrapped up nicely in a little bow. So I think that was also intriguing to me. Maggie being 12, very similar age to when I read it. I saw myself a lot in her. And also, I must say that the book itself was a love letter to books. In total, there are 57 books and their characters, actual books and their characters mentioned within Inkheart. So it is just, I loved it. It was amazing.
That's more than a year's worth of like a book a week to go and like read the book list that comes from the book.
I actually did find the book list. You can find it on Goodreads, the 57 books that are mentioned within Inkheart. It's there.
That's fantastic. It's like a book that gets people to read more books.
Yeah.
Love it. So what was sort of unique about the book? You've spoken about a few things already, but
I think similar to The Magician's Nephew, what you really liked about that it was fantasy kind of embedded within the real world. That was very similar to this book. You had fantasy characters coming into the real world. You had real characters being transferred into a book, and they kind of kept swapping over. So you have this real, for want of a better word, cultural difference between book worlds and the real world. You had the main characters swapping all the time. It was very meta as well. You have characters from a book called Inkheart coming to life in a book called Inkheart. So it's quite confusing, and it's kind of like Christopher Nolan Inception in a way. And I think the fantasy, it wasn't necessarily, like I said, it wasn't a happy ending. It continued to surprise me. It wasn't sad. It wasn't sad by any means. It was interesting, and it didn't go how I expected it to go. And I think that's why it stuck with me for all these years.
what do you think the themes that are the most important in this book are and that kind of show?
I think the themes of family are the ones that stick out the most to me. The fact that this entire thing was about, rescuing Maggie's mum and Mo's wife. But also it's just a reminder that reading can be magical. I think we all got books read to us as a child, and I had, not had books read to me by the time I was 12. So to read it, to see that through the art of reading to his child, Mo was quite literally able to bring characters to life. It was kind of just a really nice metaphor of like, if you do this, like you can create really magical worlds for your kids. So I thought that was really important, just kind of honing in on the real importance of reading and also being read to. But I think also the twists and turns of the book made me realize that sometimes we can do everything right and do what we believe is the right thing to do in the moment, and you're fighting evil and doing good, and still sometimes it will not work out how you want.
Yeah.
And we have to make compromises and sacrifice things. And that was a hard lesson to learn at 12. I'm like, I'm not sure about this. I kind of just want everything to be great and they all lived happily ever after. And I'm not saying that's not what happens at the end, but there are things that are lost along the way, and there are sacrifices that need to be made. And I think that's a really important lesson to be learning as when you're kind of on the cusp of adulthood and teenage years and going into some hard stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And that's sort of one of the things I loved about Narnia too, is that was those moments of having to choose sometimes to do the right thing, which is not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, at that age, it's such a good time to be learning these things and seeing them reflected in the things that you're reading.
Mm.
So who would you recommend this book to?
I think because of the hard themes and also the length of this book, it is, and it's not small. It's not big writing on that page either. It's very small writing. I would say from the age of about 11 or 12 up, I was, I read a bit early for my years, and even when I was 12, I kind of struggled with some of the content. Just I think probably a fair bit of it went over my head. So I think the prime age would be probably 13, 14. But really from age of 11 to any age, and adults can read this book too.
So, dream soundtrack. What would it be for you?
Okay. Like I said before, I think I'm going to have to stick with the Lord of the Rings, because that's what, when I read this book, that's what it reminded me of. So I'm thinking a little bit acoustic-y vibes. It reminded me of Ed Sheeran's song on the Lord of the Rings, whatever that song was called. I can't remember now. A bit of Ed Sheeran. Yes, thank you. Mumford & Sons, Noah Khan, so that kind of acoustic vibe. But also I did actually have in my notes as well, I'm not just copying you, Hans Zimmer would do a fantastic job with like those epic battle scenes. You have to have the king of movie soundtracks in there.
Right? He's the absolute master. Like, why would you not choose him?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you are also inspired to think of some of your favorite YA reads, and we'd love for you to be a part of our community as well. If this is your first time listening, you can join the Hope Book Club Facebook group for more conversation. There's a lot of lively members in there, and also to find out what book we'll be reviewing next. We'd also love this podcast to reach more people, and the way you can help with that is to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Until then, stay reading. We'll catch you next time. And Sim, I believe you've got a quote?
Yes, so from Maya Angelou, when I look back, I'm so impressed again with the life-giving power of literature. If I were a young person today trying to gain a sense of myself in the world, I would do it again by reading, just as I did when I was young. I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with her.
Me too.